Arcane's a very good TV show, absolutely worth all the praise it gets, and definitely worth talking about in a video. However, unfortunately today I'm not going to be singing any of its many praises, as instead I would like to draw my attention to a scene that I feel was very out of place and didn't really work in the show. And if you've watched the show, odds are you've already guessed what I'm talking about. Now, there's a lot of reasons I could point to as to why this is a terrible scene. However, I'd also like to draw my attention to a scene very similar in another show that some would say is a lot cornier, and one that I've talked about on this channel before. It's called Lego Ninjago, for those who don't know, and there's a scene in it similar to this where they have the band who made the intro for the show up in the actual show in some way and play the intro music in it. However, in Ninjago, it's done very well and is a very satisfying ending to a phenomenal season of television. So let's talk about that. Why did this work, but this didn't? There's a few reasons, so let's get into it. Firstly, with Ninjago, there's an element of nostalgia to the song that's being played. It was the music used in the intro for the first 2 seasons of the series, and was remixed for all the other subsequent seasons up until season 7, which was actually a big turning point in the show's history, as a lot of things changed after season 7. The characters got redesigned, which was a very controversial change, and one that I've really come around to in recent years. The tone of the show also got a lot darker for the next 3 seasons, and what's most important for now is the fact that the intro changed. It did not have any variation of the Weekend Whip as the music, and went for something completely different. I believe this came at the right time for the show, as by season 7 it wasn't bad that any of these things were still around, but it was starting to feel a little bit stale. Just enough that if they did it for season 8 as well, it would really be noticeable that the Weekend Whip and this particular style of intro has run its course. So after 2 seasons of it not being in the intro, having it be heard at the end of season 9 after a very good but significantly darker season of the show was a welcome surprise and was very uplifting for the characters and the audience. It really symbolized a happy and joyous victory over evil, which in this case was the Sons of Garmadon and Harumi. Ding dong, the bitch is dead. Compare this to the infamous scene in Arcane, where the intro music is played by self-inserts of the band, except it's not being really used to commemorate any sort of occasion in-universe. It doesn't really make me feel relieved that such a dark period of the show is over, and more confused. Which brings me on to my next point, as there's actually quite a few things that do confuse me about this scene, not just what I'm supposed to feel. Because I have other questions. For example, from a lore perspective, why are these people performing in this alleyway? This is the sketchiest area of the poorest neighborhood in the city, and they thought it was a good idea to go down here into some random alleyway and just all start busking with electrical instruments? Where are they plugged in? How long have they been here? Have they sung any other songs here? How has no one stolen the electrical music equipment? Again, this is a sketchy area in a poor neighborhood. Why did they think this was a good idea? Not like it's illegal to be in the richer parts of the neighborhood. There's just this random drunk guy sleeping in a fountain. They don't care. Just busk in the rich area. Why are you doing this next to a weird-ass illegal poker game? Again, compare this to the scene in Ninjago where it makes so much more sense lore-wise, because the band is here because they are singing this song in celebration of the battle that has just been won. The evil emperor has been overthrown and they want to pay tribute to the ninja with this song. A song, mind you, that has been confirmed to exist canonically in the series, as at the end of season 8, the ninja were all singing it at karaoke after thinking they had succeeded. One other thing I'd like to point out is the different art style, and specifically why I think Arcane's art style, more than Ninjago's, isn't a very good art style to have self-inserts in. You really just have to see them, and then see other characters in this world from both the poor and rich half of the city, to really know what I mean. Lego doesn't have such weaknesses, however, as the art style was made to have the characters look like, well, Lego. Having real people appear in a Lego series in Lego just works in a way that's so much better than what Arcane did, because Lego is a toy that's meant to imitate life in a lot of ways. That's why you have sets like the Big Ben, the London Bridge, Lego Hogwarts, And that's also why you have minifigures of both fictional and real people, because the toy translates real people quite well in a stylized, simplistic way that works, and you can still make out who this Lego person is supposed to be if they're a real person. So I look at these guys and I go, oh, that's the band who made the Weekend Whip. Wait a minute. Red shirt, blue shirt, black shirt, white shirt, blonde child in a green hoodie? Holy motherfucking shirt balls, it was right there, man! What do we actually learn from this sequence? Well, we learn that Vi is quite the dancer as she's actually walking along to the beat in a very odd and uncharacteristic way, if I'm honest. It looks like she has AirPods in and she's walking to her 9 to 5. Not like she just spent years in a prison that she has now just got out of and is now trying to hunt down someone who helped ruin her life. What else do we learn in the sequence? We also learn that this woman, whose name I can't remember, I'm sorry, I'm a fake fan, is playing a poker game, and Vi now knows where she is, I guess? Okay. Did we really need to convey this information in a scene that was so long and had such weird self-inserts? It really doesn't feel like the scene does enough to justify its own existence. Granted, there's not a lot of other information being conveyed in the Ninjago scene, but I'd argue that not a lot needed to be, as after all it is the end of the season, and immediately after the sequence, Lloyd sets up the future of the series and teases that the Oni are coming. It does convey one bit of information, though, that I feel gets overlooked quite a bit. It shows all the couples in this series who have been separated for this season finally reuniting and getting to enjoy a tender moment together. Meanwhile, Lloyd is just kind of there, and then Cole gets to finally break his vow of having his body be a temple and eat cake! So, now that I've gone over all the reasons why I think one scene works and one doesn't, is there anything that Arcane could have done to make this scene better? Honestly, not really. I know I said that the scene with the fold coming in Ninjago was after 2 very dark seasons compared to the rest of the show. However, at the end of the day, it is still a kids' show about Lego people, so it can only be so dark, and there's always going to be a little bit of corniness and camp to it. That's not a bad thing. It's definitely a good thing it's like that and doesn't try to take itself too seriously. But that also means it lends itself well to scenes like this, where you have a self-insert singing the song from the intro. In a much more serious and artsy show like Arcane, it feels out of place and completely derails the pace of the show and your immersion.